Moving to a new place was always a big deal for me. 3 hours away from home, 3 hours away from the town I loved, and most importantly, 3 hours away from where I grew up. And unfortunately, 3 hours away from that wonderful ex-girlfriend, which had been the leading cause of why I wanted to leave that godforsaken place. In a way, I was dying for a way to escape. I wanted a new start, I wanted a new life, and I wanted a new me. That is what I decided when I moved away. And that's what I got. It was going well within the first 6 months, and I was doing awesome at my new job. I'd even started dating this new girl, Paula, who was everything that my ex had been terrible about. Of course, she was all the things a girl had, usually. She was polite and kind and loving, but just the right amount of that girliness that really didn't get annoying. Things were going so well that I didn't even realize when things started to go, oh, so wrong. It started off with just small things. Like, I'd be certain that I'd left a book I'd been reading on my bedside table, but then I would find it next to the bath. The picture of me and my mom that I always had on my fireplace had somehow fallen and got smashed. Food that I'd left in the fridge would be gone when I went for it. As I lived alone, I knew it couldn't be anybody else. At first I thought I was just being careless. But then as more and more things happened, I was starting to think that something wasn't quite right here. I was so certain that I had turned the TV off before I went to work, and I put my favorite movie inside of a box. I then called up Paula one day after work and asked her to come over and help me look around for signs of a break-in. She kindly obliged, though she thought I was really overreacting, which I didn't know if I was, but it certainly seemed to be an option.
Babe, I know you usually have it all together, but sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes we just forget things.
She stayed with me for nearly a week. But as we'd only been dating for a few months, I didn't really want her to get caught up in my potential craziness. So when nothing happened for a week, I told her I was okay and she could go home. She kindly told me if I needed anything, to give her a call. Anytime. I honestly hoped that I wouldn't need to. The night she left, I stayed up watching TV. I was a little anxious, but I told myself that it was just an overreaction. I was so tired that I drifted off halfway through a film. I woke up at 4 in the morning with a blanket over me that I hadn't been there before. All the other odd things that had happened had been while I was out of the house. Now this freaked me out more than normal. I grabbed my phone on the side of my bed and rang Paula straight away. As it was ringing, I realized maybe I got the blanket myself in my sleep. Maybe that I was sleepwalking. That would definitely explain everything. When Paula answered, she sounded extremely worried. I told her what had happened and what I thought it was, and I'd apologized for waking her up.
It's okay, babe. I was awake anyway.
I felt better after she had said that, so I said goodnight and got myself into bed. 2 days later, I was just chilling around after work and watching TV again. It was dark outside and I had all the curtains drawn. I couldn't be certain, but I thought I heard someone moving around outside. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe it was just a dog, a cat, or something like that. But it continued intermittently for half an hour. I hadn't talked myself out of being scared until suddenly a loud bang on the window shook me to the core. Phone in hand, ready to ring Paula at seconds' notice, I hurried to the front door to make sure it was locked. It was. I also made sure that all the windows were also closed. I rang Paula. She was sweet about the whole situation and came straight over. The knock on the door startled me, but I realized it was only her. She had gotten there quicker than I'd ever expected her to. She asked me for a torch and went around outside looking for anyone. She even shouted a few times, but there was nothing. That night she stayed with me and held me, and I slept. In the morning, she seemed to know that I was upset, and I just told her that maybe I'd overreacted again, and it could have been a bird or something. Anything, really. I mean, there are animals all over the world. And certainly they weren't gonna just stop because a human was living there. She was amazingly accepting of the whole situation. Nearly every other girl I knew would have been long gone by then. When I came home from work that day, I checked outside the window that had been banged. In the flower bed underneath, I found my crappy old watch. That discovery really made me question everything that was going on. What if this was just all a figment of my imagination? I started to feel like I was going ever so slightly crazy. I didn't know what was really going on. And that seemed like a likely explanation, seeing as no one else had seen anything strange happen, and nothing really made any damn sense here. One night, a few days later, I was surfing the internet. It randomly cut out just as I was loading a YouTube video. I waited, and waited, and waited. I tried to reconnect, but still nothing. I went to look at the router downstairs. The plug was sat on the floor next to the socket. Wait, that couldn't have been me. I knew it wasn't me. I had been surfing on the internet for, what, 3 hours? There was no way I couldn't have done it. Then I realized, if it wasn't me, it must mean someone had been in this house. Maybe they still were. I ran for my phone. I called Paula, but she didn't answer. After 3 calls, I left her a message saying I was sorry, but I'd be dropping by because weird things were happening to me again. I got in the car and left. I got to her house, and I found it odd because she wasn't there. She hadn't mentioned anything about going out, but then we didn't tell each other everything, though, so I just rang her again in hopes that she would answer. This time, she answered. She sounded short of breath and slightly panicked, essentially the way I was feeling right now. She told me she had gotten my message and she was rushing back to meet me. I asked her if I should call the police because I didn't really know what to do. It was a big, messy, confusing situation. She told me that I could, but they probably wouldn't find anything, and if there really was someone in my house, they would be long gone by now. And why hadn't that person attacked me when they had the chance then? It was strange logic to me, but I was just happy to feel safe in her arms. I let it slide. She said she would come back with me the next day and check it out. That night, as she lay snoring softly next to me, I couldn't sleep. I was thinking way too much when an odd thought hit me. The other day, when I asked her to come over, Paula had gotten me in half the time it took usually, which it means she had to be nearby. She had access to my house, my belongings, and even my keys and my spare key. She'd been out somewhere undisclosed when someone had been in my house last night. And she'd also discouraged me from calling the police. What if I was lying next to the woman who had been doing this all to me? I couldn't stand that thought, but the more I lay here, the more it began to make sense. I crept out of bed and started silently looking through her cupboards and her drawers to see if anything was missing. There was nothing. Nothing at all until I opened up her desk drawer. My favorite DVD, my most prized movie, The Crow, if you must ask, sat amongst the random wires and letter. I reeled back. But, why? Why would she do this? What is she gaining from this? Power? That's all I could guess. It's about power, yeah. She wasn't so different from any of my other exes, I guess. Always wanted to control me. I wondered if I should confront her about it, but I realized that if I was right, what would she do if I figured her out? I couldn't stand the thought of being there any longer. Not thinking straight, I left. I drove the long way home. I needed to think, but thinking was so much that I could hardly concentrate on the road. How I made it home in one piece, I'll never know. The phone call in the morning was one I'd been expecting, but one I still didn't know how to answer. She'd asked me why I'd left, and I told her that I couldn't sleep and I just needed to get out and think, but once I left, I couldn't get back in or something like that. She didn't seem too convinced, but let it slide regardless, thankfully. She asked if I wanted her to check out the house. I told her no, that it was okay. And I didn't tell her that I'd arranged for the locks to be changed that day, or that now I had a deadbolt on the door. For that next week, I essentially cut myself off from society. I called in sick to work and stopped taking calls from Paula. She left me messages saying how worried she was about me. She came over, but I ignored the knocks. I finally rang her and told her I'd gone home for a while to sort things out. I couldn't leave the house for fear that she might break in somehow and do something else to me. I barely slept for that same reason. By now, I couldn't even call the police. I was sure they would think me crazy, and I couldn't prove anything about this. It was starting to get a bit much after that. I woke up one night after a fitful sleep, and I heard banging on the door. I gripped the kitchen knife that I carried with me at all times and pressed my back against the wall.
Why don't you want me in your life?
I was sure she was coming. I was certain she was going to break in. It went quiet after a while. No more sounds that night. But save for a few seconds every now and again. I didn't sleep that night. When the sun rose, so did I. I got out of bed to make myself more coffee. I stopped dead on my way to the living room. Letters, 3 feet tall, scrawled across the wall.
Why won't you just let me in?
I dropped to the floor, sobbing. She had been inside my house. I checked the door and there were no signs of entry. I didn't understand how she'd done it. I called the police immediately. I told them everything that had happened. I told them about Paula. I told them how scared I was. They took a statement. They looked around and saw no signs of forced entry either. In fact, no way into the house at all, safe, except for a tiny bathroom window downstairs that all I could remember if I'd locked it or not. They left me. They told me they would talk to Paula, and I quickly locked the door after them. God. How do things get like this? That night I stayed awake again. Sat in bed with my back against the wall, knife in my hand. I didn't even need the coffee to keep me awake anymore. Fear did that just damn well. More and more banging that night. More banging, and I couldn't bring myself to check what it was. Although I knew damn well what it was. The banging was louder, as if it were closer to me. It went on for longer, too. In the morning, there was a new message in my house again. Just underneath the old one, the handwriting more untidy, as if it were rushed, as if someone was furious with me.
Why don't you want me in your life?
My breath got caught in my chest, and I called the police again. And again they came, took more photos, another statement, and then they left an officer outside. Like that helped last time. Jesus. I was a prisoner in my own fucking house. But at least now, I felt a little bit safer. I went about my day more normally than in weeks. I fell asleep for the first time after first triple checking the police car was outside. I woke up in the morning, fresher than ever. I walked downstairs ready to offer the policeman a coffee when I stumbled across it. A new message was written over the other two with bigger letters. The paint was still dripping a deep red, as if it were blood.
I got in.
I ran to the police car and faltered. He wasn't in the car. I called the police and they came immediately. I was too scared to go back in the house and I was shaking on the lawn. Within minutes, they had called for backup, and soon my house was flooded with policemen. Two guys wheeled out a gurney that was covered in a sheet, and I didn't need to ask to know that it was the policeman. I was taken to the station where they gave me tea and wrapped me in a blanket. When they tried to take a statement from me, I found that I couldn't speak. I was screaming to them with my eyes that it was Paula, that they needed to stop him from doing it again, doing it to me, but they just couldn't understand. The doctor decided I was in shock and prescribed me some pills. The police decided to keep me in one of their cells overnight due to the death happening on my property. They came in a while later to tell me that they couldn't find Paula. Her car was missing and her house was empty. I was glad that I was in the station that night. I felt safer. I slept a fitful sleep, broken with nightmares of being captured by the unseen figure that I knew was Paula. I woke in the morning to find a doctor in my room. He was explaining something to me. I couldn't really take it in. There was something about sleep and multiple and dangerous. I suddenly realized that I wasn't in the cell I'd fallen asleep in. This one was brighter and wider, and I couldn't move. Apparently writing all this was supposed to be cathartic, or at least that's what my psychiatrist tells me. I've honestly just found it a bit tedious. Hello guys, I just wanted to say thank you for helping us convert over 300 subscribers here to the Cthulhu clan. It is amazing that we are growing this fast, and I love all of your guys' recent comments and enthusiasm on my pastas. I'm living the dream, so please keep up the good work, cultists. I'd also like to thank my closest friends here at the Creepypasta crew: Custom, Rasta, Flare, Warby, and Creeper. Oh, and special thanks to Giggles for lending her, very psychotic voice for our video today. Without them, we'd be nowhere near where we are now. So go to their Creepypasta page and check them all out because, well, I love them. Speaking of love, happy Valentine's Day, guys. Thanks for watching.